morning, Trinity Christian Church. It's good to be with you guys. And this is once again the platform that we are working from, coming to you live on Facebook and YouTube and wherever it is that you can be getting a hold of this opportunity for us to do church together. But good to be with you guys. I really miss hanging out with you guys. We had our first leadership meeting this week in person for the first time in 3 months. The whole youth team got together, about 7 of us. We went up to a rooftop in Buena Park. I say rooftop. It was a car parking structure. We went to the top level with our cars and kind of circled them around and got out our chairs and sat all 6 feet apart from each other with our masks on. And we had a chance to just talk to each other and kind of make some plans about what to do with the youth. And that was really exciting, just to kind of be together and see one another and kind of hear what God was doing in each other's lives. And I miss that. I miss that with you. Julie's not here with me right now, but so she doesn't get a chance to weigh in. But we really miss being with one another. In the month of July, we're going to look at maybe having our first church meeting together. We've got some plans for what that'll look like. But for right now, here we are coming to you through this platform, live streaming. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of what we've been doing this whole season of kind of COVID and trying to do the whole social distancing thing to keep one another safe. And it's about time for us to start considering how we're going to do this and what it's going to look like. So we need your advice, your input. And Julie's already got some VBS stuff going and some ideas on how to do that. And we have several families, I think 9 or 10 families signed up to do that. So that's exciting. That'll be a way that we start coming together and kind of seeing what we can do together. But this morning, I want to talk to you guys about something that's been on my heart. As we've all been at home, we've been watching a whole lot more screen time, TV, network, maybe cable news networks. I'm not sure what you've been watching, but a lot more information is coming our way from the screens that we're watching, whether it's a phone, whether it's a computer, a laptop, an iPad, whatever it happens to be. We are just kind of hungry for learning about what's next, what's happening. And I've noticed something happen that I thought maybe we should speak about a little bit this morning. And one of the things that I noticed happen is that we're becoming a very opinion-based group. And opinions are good. Opinions have their place. And but we're going to talk in just a minute. We're going to listen to the worship team do a song. We're going to talk about our opinions this morning. That's what we're going to talk about, our feelings, our opinions, and how much weight they should have in our life. As we get started, let's think about who our God is. Let's let the worship team kind of help open our hearts and minds to God. We are going to listen to this song, Unstoppable God, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about our opinions.
Heaven thundered and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. And faith commanded and the mountains move. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done.
All right, the first slide you see after a beautiful song like that, you probably weren't expecting to be this slide. Take a look at that slide and just internalize what just happened when I clicked that slide on. I'm willing to bet that no matter who you are or where you're sitting, you just felt a surge of opinions. I bet you just felt a surge of maybe even frustration. These sources, when we look at them, we recognize something very universal about all of them. They are all about stirring controversy and opinions within us, stirring up this sense of feelings. I can hardly see a slide like that without thinking in my mind, what is the person who's speaking going to talk about? Maybe that's one of the feelings you have. Well, oh no, what is Pastor Charles going to talk about? I've got my family member watching this. I hope he's not going to talk about his political opinion or who he thinks is right or wrong. And you are fortunate. I'm not going to talk about any of that. That's not the purpose of this, because ultimately it doesn't matter which one of these news sources or platforms are right or wrong. That's not even what we're talking about this morning. But what we are talking about is the fact that they have the power to stir emotions and feelings, and possibly even more in your life and mine. And we want to talk about whether that's healthy and how to balance our consumption of screen time, how to balance all of this stuff that you're seeing on the screen right now in the midst of being a Christian, in the midst of being someone called to put our heart and mind and our focus on that which is true, that which is noble, that which is perfect, that which God has in store for us. Unfortunately, this is the way we interact with the world nowadays. It's often through screens, and through what we see on those screens comes through these type of platforms. Of course, not limited to just those that you see on the screen. There's many others, and maybe some of you don't have anything to do with any of those on the screen. You've definitely heard about one or more of those platforms. And we know there's a whole lot of filtering that goes on, and a whole lot of bias and one-sidedness or that-sidedness. And just to kind of shed a little light on that, in case you were thinking that, oh, that's not really bias, Pastor Charles. These are just people who present the facts. I don't know if there's anyone out there who believes that, but check out this next slide. This is the only fact slide I'm going to have, so you don't have to worry about me dishing out a bunch of facts. This is it. So if you can't stand listening to facts, then just close your ears for a second. But according to public records, 97% of contributions of self-identifying media professionals, I know that sounds technical, that's just saying people who are in the news, the media, they gave to the same political campaign in 2016. Now, once again, remember, this morning is not about who's right or wrong. Just kind of let that go out of your mind. But 97% of all people in the media who gave money towards a campaign gave to the same one. If you're looking for some of the source material and where that is, you can look at those three companies down below. They're the ones who kind of dug this up out of public records. But I got to thinking about how biased these sources are that we get our information from. How biased these platforms are. These are professional, biased opinion generators. And we don't always see it that way, but it is their job, their role as professionals. They get paid to create biased opinions, to create opinions based on what they believe, and to generate that opinion to us. And the only reason I'm spending time on this is because I think it has an effect on us that we need to think about as Christians. Remember, this morning I'm not talking to you about who's right and who's wrong. That's not even the discussion. Whether you feel like one or all of these are right, or all of these are wrong, or half of these are right, or half of these are wrong, or some combination therein. That's not actually so important. But what we need to recognize is that the places that we're getting a lot of the information that is causing us to build our lives on these truths or these opinions come from places that are intentionally biased. It is their role, their goal to focus on influencing you and I to have certain opinions or to believe or think in certain ways. And that's the only reason I shared that previous slide with some of those facts, because if you're wondering if they are or not biased, or no, they're generally neutral, they're not neutral. They have opinions. They have bias that they want you and I to believe. I have opinions. You have opinions. And we're going to look at how important our opinions really are in terms of who we are as Christians, and what weight or what balance are we giving opinions to rule and run our lives, to be the truth from which we operate on a daily basis, versus the things that are really true, the things that are really noble and righteous and pure, the things that last forever. We're going to get into that a little bit deeper. But I think it's important for us to recognize that these sources are not at all concerned with facts or reality. And it may feel that way, and hopefully I'm not offending you deeply if you work at one of these places. That's not my goal at all. But they are not in any way concerned about whether or not the things presented are really facts or reality. Their truth, the things that they base their assumptions off of, are very biased. They are very consumed to one side or the other. Again, we're not really concerned this morning about who's right and who's wrong. I think it's just important for us to know that many of these platforms through which we communicate with one another, or through which we believe we're interpreting the way the world operates and the way the world is saying, thinking, and believing things, the hope that we might have in what's happening next, are all filtered through very biased groups and organizations that aren't terribly concerned about facts or reality. So when I throw that slide up, I know the emotions are going to come up. I know that the emotions are going to come up because that is what they broker in. That is their business. Their business is emotions. And the thing about emotions is that opinions cannot lead to truth. Opinions cannot lead our truth. Opinions can lead to truth, but they can't lead our truth. The way we live cannot be based just on opinions. And the reason why is because opinions change. Opinions come and go. Opinions one day may be that the best color to paint your house is such and such. And then 10 years later, nobody can stand that color. And you're stuck with the house that was painted the right color 10 years ago, but nobody else nobody likes that anymore. It's no longer the right way to paint your house. Well, that's a trivial example, but the point still stands. Opinions change so frequently. Opinions change so consistently, they cannot lead our truth. They cannot be the thing from which we live or base or grow our lives on. And these people who broker in opinions, these people who, with the screen time that we're constantly giving them, are busy with their biased opinions. We begin to believe that sometimes their opinions are truth. But the truth is the opposite. That's that part in the red line down there. Opinions must follow the truth. There must be a truth from which we base our opinions. There must be a core from which we build our lives. And out of that core comes truth, not vice versa, which we tend to find right here. I want to share one other thing about opinions from most of these social media or just news organizations. The truth is that their truth, their reality is that if the money and power dried up, they would quit talking to you. They are only interested in the money that comes with their influence and the power they get through influencing us. So for most of these sources, what's happening is opinions follow the money and the power. If the money and the power is going in one direction, well, then that's the direction the opinions go. If the money and power is going in a different direction, then that's the way they go. And if we start basing our hearts, our lives, our hopes and expectations on the information that we're hearing through these biased filters that we're hearing them, we'll find ourselves blown and tossed by the wind. James talked about this in James 1 when we talk to God and we develop a relationship with God, not to allow our hearts to just be blown and tossed by whichever wave of opinion goes left or right or up or down. And yet we find that a lot of the places that we get our facts, or the places that we start making decisions about who we like and who we side with and who we are opposed to and who we will listen to and who we will not listen to and who we will follow and who we won't follow, a lot of those opinions come from sources that are all about money and power. If you weren't a source of money for them, they would stop talking to you. If you weren't a source of power or influence, if they couldn't influence your life and gain power through that, they'd be done with you. And when we look at it that way, they don't seem like something we really want to put our confidence in. And yet we find ourselves with a lot of our truth wrapped up and based on the things that these organizations say. So what are the results of living by opinions? When we live by opinions, when we allow these sources to kind of influence how we build our lives. Now remember, there's a difference between having opinions and enjoying that and maybe having a good laugh if we have difference of opinions and voting one way versus voting in others. But when opinions become the source, the core of our life, and these organizations start to divide us into left and right and different people within the same family not talking to one another or frustrated with one another, we're starting to see the results of living by opinions. When we live by opinions, we find ourselves, let's look at a few of the things. We find ourselves divided into politics. We find ourselves being, Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative or independent or libertarian. We find ourselves divided into titles from which we segregate ourselves. And this happens in our families. It happens in culture. It happens between races. We find hatred growing. We find a lot of broken families. I know so many families who have certain family members they can't talk to because of opinions, because of political opinions, or because of these diametrically held beliefs that if somebody else doesn't see it my way, I can't even talk to them. And so some of these heavily biased sources have been brokering in opinions they get paid for. They get paid to be biased. They get more money and power and influence the more biased they are. They are literally having the power to break up our families, to create negativity. I don't know if you've noticed that about the news cycle, but the news follows what's negative. And that's kind of cliche, but we know it. If it's if it's bleeding, it sells, right? I mean, if it's negative, it's going to be the first thing on the news at 9, so to speak. So the news follows these cycles, and we sometimes get sucked up into the opinions, the negativity, and along with it comes disappointment. Along with it comes frustration. We're frustrated at the people they tell us to be mad at. They tell us this person or this organization or this group, they're the result of all the things going bad in your life. And you think for a minute and you listen to the opinion, oh yeah, if I just hate that person more or stay away from them, or if I hear one of those people at work or church or school or in my family talking that way, then I'll know it's their fault that things are going bad. It's their fault that everything is bad in life. And then we end up inevitably with despair, because despair sets in, because there is no solution. We're always looking at the negative things, and we're living our life based on opinions which come and go, and frustration and disappointment are part of that opinion-based living. And we're all too accustomed to it. We've become so accustomed to building our life on the opinions presented to us through these very biased platforms that it's sometimes hard to pull ourselves out and go, wait a second, do I really dislike everybody who doesn't see it my way? Is that really how low I have stooped in life? Have I really become a person who, if someone has a different opinion than me, I can't be in the same room with them, I can't eat dinner with them, I can't listen to their viewpoint and see things their way? Well, in some cases, we start feeling that way. We start isolating from one another. And God hasn't called us to be these people. And while those sources that I've talked about, while they give us opportunities to see the world through different viewpoints, we cannot find our hope and our faith in what they present. We have to remember that they are not the truth by which we can live. So some of these results of a living by opinions are not great. And when I flash a screen like this and you sometimes think about what opinions or feelings or emotions come out, I think we recognize right away those are not healthy places to make decisions in life. Those are not good reasons to segregate myself from other humans in this life because of the things that these people or these platforms are telling me, so that they can make money off of me, so that they can continue to present a very biased opinion that's one-sided. And it doesn't matter which side it is. Remember, it can be left, right, middle, some combination there. It doesn't matter which side. They are hoping to make money and gain power out of you and I following them. Literally, that's what it's called on a lot of these social media sites, is following people. And Christ said something about following him. We're going to get into the scriptural side of this. If you have your Bible with you, we're going to look at Matthew 7:24. In a little bit, we're going to talk about how Christ talked about following him as a disciple. Right now, we're going to look at something he said about how we build our life, and that we have these two choices. We do have truth we can build on, or we do have opinions and fiction we can build on. And so Christ says here in Matthew 7:24 through 27, it's on two slides. We're going to start with this slide. He says, everyone who hears these words of mine. Now, real quickly, he just got done with the Sermon of the Mount preaching passage. So everyone who hears these words of mine, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and they put them into practice. This is like a wise man or woman who has built their house up on a rock. And the rain comes down and the streams rose and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it did not fall. And here's the reason why: because it had its foundation on the rock. We're just going to pause there for a second. Everyone who hears these words, when we're listening to the things of Christ and we're putting those things into practice, there's a whole different result in life that he's talking about. He doesn't say you won't confront or be confronted by tragedy or loss or frustration or hurt or pain. No, on the contrary, he says those things will still be part of your life. You will still interact with things that disappoint and let you down. He's saying the difference is the person who has built their life on my facts, my truth, the things that I have said are true. This person will stand the test of time. When those rough things come, when those difficult things pile on, they won't find themselves in despair, blaming others, segregating from their family, looking to put the excuse on someone else. They will find themselves holding strong because they are holding on to what really is true. Not opinions, not bias, but what is really true about life. And what is really true about life is that God made us, he loves us, he has a plan for our life, and we have to discover it by listening and following the words of God in faith. That's what's true. That's what's real. That's where we can put our faith and our hope and not be disappointed. So he says everyone who does this is like a person who's built their life on something solid, on the rock, something that will stand. And then he goes on to say, but everyone who hears these words of mine, we're continuing here, anyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice, it's like a foolish person building their house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. The house he's talking about is your life. He's saying when your life is built upon the opinions of very biased organizations, then what ends up happening is when the difficult times come, when the strain and the stress and the trials of life come at you, there's no foundation. There's nothing to keep your life sustained. And those opinions that change like sand, sometimes it washes over here and sometimes it washes over there. And when we wrap so much of our heart in our decision making and the relationships we're willing to have or not have with friends or family or coworkers around opinions that change like sand, Christ is saying that's like building our lives on something that can't possibly hold when things go bad. When things go wrong, there's nothing to dig into. There's no foundation through which to prevail, to overcome, to be more than just washed away. And the wash away isn't literally a house here. It's your life. It's everything you've built. It's everything you've put your hope and trust and faith in. And so Christ is saying people who hear the words that I have to say, the words of life that I have to give to you, and they put their hope in these things, they will be the cosmic difference between a life washed away having no meaning and a life that holds strong no matter what happens. We're going to listen to the worship the worship team sing a song about this God of amazing grace and who he is. The song is titled This is Amazing Grace, and it talks a little bit about who Christ is and who God is, who this person is that we're listening to and putting our faith in. And then we're going to get back into this topic about our opinions and whether or not we're following truth or opinions.
Who breaks the power of sin and darkness, whose love is mighty, is so much stronger
So I love that song. This is Amazing Grace. And when we look at the reality of that passage that we were talking about, we come to two options in life. We see there are two different things that Christ says we can be building our life on. We can build on truth, or we can build on opinions. We can build on that which lasts. We can build on the amazing grace that we have through Christ, in God through Christ, or we can build on opinions, things that come and go. The difference, of course, is the difference between building on something that lasts or something that will wash away as soon as the opinions go in a different direction. As a matter of fact, he said there are two results in life, right? They're the results that last truth that remains consistent no matter what's happening, and it's true for all times and all people in all places. And then there's opinions that tend to fail, that tend to segregate us, that tend to do all those things that we talked about a few minutes ago that cause division among us and frustration. And we wonder why, why is it, why are we so frustrated? Well, we're building our lives on those opinions. And while all of these organizations can be places that we can find information and have, share opinions together, opinions have their place in life, right? While all these organizations can help us foster dialogue and discussion and come to better conclusions about life and living and how to do things, when we put our hope in there, when we hold to these biased teachings, we're going to find ourselves in despair. We're going to find ourselves like the people whose houses, being our lives, of course, are washed away when the difficult times come. We have nothing to stand on. Jesus said here in John 8:31 through 32, he said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. He says, and you will know, what is he talking about? The truth, not the opinions, not good ideas. You will know the truth. The truth is what's real about reality. That's all the truth is. The truth is what is real about reality. When I have to face the truth, I have to face reality. I have to face what's really going to happen, or what decisions I've really made, or what's really going to happen to me when I die. This is the truth. You will know the truth, and this truth will set you free. Very different perspective than what we feel when I show you that slide with all the different social media and news sources on it. We don't feel a sense of freedom when I flash that sign, that slide up. We feel a sense of captivity. Oh no, what's Charles going to say? Oh no, I hate what this organization says, or every time that one comes on, I don't like this. We don't feel a sense of freedom. We feel a sense of division and frustration and irritation. And Christ said the real truth, when you know the truth, it creates freedom. It allows you to be a person who's free. It doesn't captivate you with frustration and despair and segregation and turning your back on one another's cultural, racial issues going on. That's not what real truth does. That's what opinions and bias does. That's what non-fact does. And that's what, unfortunately, so much of our information that's coming our way through the screens that have so much benefit in life, right? I'm actually able to communicate to you through a screen, right? There's so much benefit through these screens. But there's also so much that's dangerous that we have to be careful. We don't put our hope and our faith in. We don't allow it to dictate how we live. He says, if you hold on to my teaching, Christ says, then you're my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Well, I see three spiritual principles here. You probably saw some of these right off, that we're to hold to Jesus' teaching. This is one of the things that we're called to do. He has taught us what truth is, how to live. Number two, he says to learn what truth is. We have to learn. We don't know what truth is just because we're hanging out and open the Bible one day and all of a sudden we know what's truth. We have to learn. We have to continue to test and trust and move forward in faith to discover what is truth, what is true about life, what has God said is true. And then we're called to live in this freedom. And this is the exciting part. As Christians, we're not called to live as people who segregate on the right or the left, who hold an opinion and then don't talk to anyone who holds the opposite opinion, who just wrap our hearts and minds around one platform and how they see the world, and then dictate that we can't have a sense of peace or conversation or communication with anyone who doesn't see it that way, understand it that way, or believe exactly that way. We're actually called to live in freedom, to live with our hands open, ready to receive and to serve one another, not with the fist, not with our hands closed, ready to fight someone who doesn't see it our way or doesn't like the organization that we'd rather watch for news or social media or whatever it is. Those things become really petty and small and insignificant when you think about it. We are called to live in freedom, to learn to love one another, to figure out what is true, not to hold biased opinions through which we jab and stab one another to death when we really don't have anything to build our lives on, when we really don't have anything in those opinions to build on that will last the test of time. I'm going to close it with this one passage here from 2 Corinthians. Paul was talking about the weapons that we fight with. And I know this passage is a little small. I probably should have turned it into 2 slides. If you're on a small phone, it might be hard to read. But I'll go ahead and I'll read it out loud. If you can see it, that's great. If not, we're looking at 2 Corinthians 10. 2 Corinthians 10, verses 4 and 5. And Paul says that the weapons that we fight with are not the weapons of the world. I'm going to pause there. He's talking about that slide I showed you. He says that the weapons we fight with, the way we fight as Christians, is not by siding with biased opinions and separating into 2, 3, or 4 camps and everybody aiming their words like guns at one another, firing off at each other. He says that's not the weapons that we fight with. On the contrary, he says the weapons we fight with, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. He's talking about spiritual strongholds. Things that fight against unity, things that fight against faith, that fight against loving someone who's different than us, or maybe doesn't hold the same opinion as us. He said, those are the things we're fighting against, not people, not opinions. He says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that, listen, sets itself up against the knowledge of God. He says, that's what we fight for. Things that are fighting against the knowledge of God. We fight to know God, is what he's saying. We don't fight to put someone else down or to trash their opinion or to make them feel less than us if they don't agree with our political platform or whatever position we happen to be believing, until our opinion might change one day, and then maybe we don't even see it the way we did when we used to fight so vehemently about it in years past. He says, no, we fight to get to know the knowledge of God. And then he says this, we're going to talk about all 3 of these separate. He says, we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. He says, we take every thought to make it obedient to Christ, so that Christ runs our opinion generator, so that we're not making opinions based upon what everybody else tells me to feel. And when a slide comes up like that and I get all those emotions because I think, I hope Charles isn't going to talk about this, and I hope he's not going to say anything about who's right and who's wrong. Well, that's because we are so used to letting our thoughts be captive to those opinions. We're used to just bowing down to those opinions and fighting one another about who's right and who's wrong. Well, the Word of God says that's not truth, and it doesn't set you free. As a matter of fact, if you want to build your life on something that lasts, build it on the freedom of not being captive to those opinions, not being held so directly, even if you hold one of those opinions. And there's nothing wrong with holding an opinion as to, which news source is more right and more factual and which one's more fake and which one. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not where we find our confidence to build our lives. We find it in taking every thought and saying, Christ, how do you want me to think on this? Who do you want me to be in this situation? Who do you want me to be as I see the world through your eyes, through the fact that you love all people and you created them all to experience your love and to experience it through relationship with other humans? Who do you want me to be, Christ? Taking every thought captive to Christ. 3 action steps I see right away. And I told you this was the conclusion. So we're actually going to conclude here. Okay, the first one is that, jumped ahead. Fight for truth, not against people. Fight for truth. There it is. I'm sorry. It's coming up. A little glitch there. Fight for truth. In our fight, we need to fight for what's true, not against other people. In another passage in Galatians, Paul says that our struggle is not against flesh and blood. We often think that the thing I'm fighting against in life is other people with different opinions. God said, not at all. That doesn't really even matter that much, whether someone agrees with you politically or disagrees or whatever, cultural agreement you might or might not have with another group, another person. That's not really what the struggle is. The struggle is all people finding truth, finding what's real about God, what's real about reality. That is the fight. The fight is for truth. It's not against my neighbor or my brother or someone of a different race. That is not the struggle. Someone of a different political party. That's not the fight. We are to fight for truth, not against other people. Second action step is that we're to fight to learn and to learn, know, and grow in the knowledge of God. And this is an honest, reflective question for you and I to ask ourselves. How hard do you fight to know God? And now think about the things we struggle with throughout life. We struggle maybe to get up in the morning. Maybe you struggle to find the food you like and to get your coffee. I got my big coffee right here. We struggle to get these things done. What do we struggle and fight for in life? What are we pushing hard to accomplish? And be honest, do you fight to know God? Do you fight to learn to grow in God. He said that's what we should be fighting, not fighting one another, not fighting opinions that don't matter. We should be fighting to know and grow in the knowledge of God. That should be the struggle. That should be the issue in our life. How close am I growing to who God wants me to be? And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. I'm sure it's a challenge for you too. So first, fight for truth. We're not fighting against people. Second, we're fighting to learn and know and grow in the knowledge of God. We're trying to ask ourselves that real honest question. How hard am I trying to know who God is? And third, when tempted by biased opinions, right? When tempted to put my faith, and I didn't have a lot of room on the slide, so I got to expound and explain this a little bit. When I'm tempted to put my hope in opinions that are presented from other people, maybe some of those platforms that I discussed, I have to choose, rather than doing that, I have to choose the commitment of placing my mind into God's hands. I have to say, God, I don't understand why this is happening right now. I'm really frustrated by this group of people, or people who see things this way, or people who always say that, or phrases like this, or activity and actions that happen like this. Why God, do you let these people do these things? And then of course all these platforms kind of present them in their own bias, scenario, and so we start to love and hate people based on opinions, things that aren't even real. We don't even know their story, and we find ourselves hating people we don't even know, or rallying behind someone we don't know if they're even a good person, if they have a good character to rally behind. Excuse me. So instead of getting our hearts, minds wrapped up into that, place your mind into God's hands. That's what this verse here means when it says, take every thought captive and obedient to Christ. It means the action step there is that when I'm tempted to get wrapped up into opinions around me, and again, there's nothing wrong with having opinions, but those have to take second, third, or fourth place to living by truth. I need to place my mind, my thoughts into God's hands, literally through prayer. I can say, God, I'm having thoughts of frustration, hatred, despair. I want to give these things to you. I want these thoughts to be in your captivity, because in your captivity, there's actually freedom. You represent freedom. For me to take something out of my hands and put it into your hands means it just grew. It now has more room to grow. It has more potential. It can become so much more than whatever that thought was when I was holding on to it, because I'm small, I'm petty, I'm selfish. I can't see everything. So what I see is limited and even foggy and maybe heavily biased. But when I place it into God's hands, my mind, my thoughts have the opportunity to grow beyond anything I could have hoped for or expected, because in Him is freedom, and that is truth. That is what Christ means by, when you know the truth will bring freedom. Holding a thought captive to Christ is not reducing your mind's capacity, it's expanding it. It's putting it in a place that's so much bigger than our own petty, small opinions, wherein which we start fighting with one another and being frustrated with one another and irritated with one another. So I know I've gone on a little bit long this morning, but this is something that's been passionate on my heart. And I know it's a little bit more of a serious topic, but I just want to kind of share with you guys that I think at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with having opinions. There's nothing wrong with watching and allowing our mind to consume some of the concepts that are happening through these social media or news network locations. But we have to be so careful that they don't take the place of God in our lives. Meaning they don't divide us. They don't cause us to have emotions and feelings to hate our fellow brothers or sisters or mankind. We cannot allow that to happen, because God has not intended you and I to live that way. The three ways that God intends for us to live is to fight for truth, not against people. To learn, to know, and grow. To fight, to learn, to know, and grow in the knowledge of God. And to recognize that when we are tempted to build our house on the sand, to live in that area that is wish-washy, and sometimes we find support and sometimes we get washed away. When we're tempted to put our faith, hope, and love in that area, that instead we choose to build our lives on the rock, on the words of Christ, and we place our mind, our thoughts into God's hands. And that's a commitment. That's a statement of commitment. We're going to sing a song here together called Ever Be. It's literally a song of commitment. It literally talks about the reality of who we are in Christ and His commitment to love us and to connect with us. So I encourage you to take a minute, just kind of convert your heart and mind towards a moment of worship, and we're going to watch the worship team lead us and sing this song of commitment together.
gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old. And your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizons, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, and faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole, and you shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. Now you're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt, and rid of all her shame, and known by your true name. And that's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And that's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips.
Hey, thanks once again for joining us this morning. Glad that you could be part of our church, and this is the platform, of course, through which our church is presented. I encourage you to post your comments and your thoughts. We're going to try to respond to some of those and have a moment here live where we can dialogue with some of that. We really miss hanging out together with you guys. We look forward to what God will be doing as we continue to ask ourselves, how do we healthily and in a loving way come back together so that we're not creating more risk than necessary. But I miss you guys, long to be with you guys. Hope to see you guys at church as we start looking at how we're going to open this up over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And thank you for your time and attention. I know this is a topic that when we talk about the emotions involved in all these different sides and our opinions, that it can be easy just to tune the speaker out. So thank you guys for joining, for persevering to the end. And I encourage you to post your comments and recognize that our fight is not against one another. Our fight is to grow our lives in Christ. God bless, and thank you guys for joining us this morning.